What if everything you believe to be good, moral, and necessary was planted in you to keep you weak? I'm not talking about conspiracies. I'm talking about something deeper, more invisible. I'm talking about the fact that you learned to obey before you learned to think, that you accepted values before you questioned them, that you built an entire life on foundations you never examined. And most disturbing, you call this freedom. He is sitting in the meeting room. 10th presentation of the month. The same metrics, the same graphs, the same promises of continuous improvement. He nods at the right moments, smiles when expected, maintains the proper posture. He has been doing this for 7 years. At night on the way home, a strange feeling. It is not sadness. It is not frustration. It's something more subtle. The realization that he's playing a role, like an actor who has memorized the script so well that he has forgotten he's acting. He wonders when was the last time he did something he really wanted to do. He can't remember, because all his choices were made within a system of acceptable answers. The right college, the right career, a stable relationship, the right apartment. Everything is fine, but nothing seems real. There are moments when he observes himself from the outside, as if he were watching someone else's life. He sees his own hands typing emails. He sees his mouth saying things he has learned to say. He sees his body occupying spaces he has learned to occupy. And at the center of it all, a void he can't name. Because the problem isn't unhappiness. You can remedy unhappiness. The problem is not knowing if what you feel is really yours, or just an echo of what you were taught to feel. Perhaps you recognize this state. Perhaps you have already realized in some moment of silence that you are living on autopilot, that your convictions are not convictions. They are just repetitions of phrases you have heard so many times that you began to believe they were your own. It's not your fault, it's conditioning. From day one, you were molded, first by your family, with their unspoken expectations and projected fears. Then by school, which didn't teach you to think, but to reproduce. Later by society, which whispers in unison, be productive, be accepted, be normal. And you learned. You learned so well that you forgot you were learning. You learned to seek approval before seeking truth. You learned to follow paths because they exist, not because they make sense. You learned to value what others value, to desire what others desire, to fear what others fear. But no one ever asked you, what about you? What do you really want? What do you really believe when you remove all the layers of conditioning? What if the answer is, I don't know? More than 140 years ago, Friedrich Nietzsche looked at humanity and saw exactly that. He saw people living lives they did not choose. He saw human beings chained to values they never questioned. He saw an entire civilization sleepwalking towards something he called spiritual domestication. And he wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra not as a book of philosophy, but as a cry of warning. Zarathustra is not a gentle teacher. He offers no comfort. He does not promise that everything will be fine if you follow 10 simple steps. He comes down from the mountain after years of solitude and brings a message that no one wants to hear. You are living like slaves, and what's worse, you chose it. But Nietzsche was not just denouncing. He was diagnosing. And the diagnosis is frightening. Modern humanity has lost something essential. It has lost the ability to create its own values. It has lost the courage to face real freedom. And instead, it has built comfortable prisons and learned to call them home. Do you understand what this means? It means that when Nietzsche announced God is dead, he was not being blasphemous. He was being a surgeon. He was exposing the deepest wound of modernity, the death of absolute authority that defined what was good, true, and necessary. And when that authority died, when the old value system collapsed, humanity had a choice: to create new values from its own will, or to desperately seek new masters to obey. Most chose the second option. Because here's the truth that no one wants to admit. Real freedom is terrifying. When you are truly free, there is no script. There is no map. There is no divine voice telling you what to do. There are no guarantees. Just you, the void, and the unbearable responsibility of deciding for yourself what makes life worth living. And most people, when confronted with this kind of freedom, panic. They prefer known imprisonment to the unknown abyss. They prefer to obey a system, any system, rather than face the anguish of having to build meaning from scratch. They prefer the illusion that someone knows the right path, even if that path leads nowhere. Dostoevsky understood this when he wrote, "Man is an animal that wants a master, not because he is naturally submissive, but because the responsibility of governing one's own life is a burden that crushes those who were never prepared to carry it." And you were not prepared. No one was. You were trained to obey, not to create, to adapt, not to question, to seek security, not to seek truth. And now when you look at your life, there is a persistent feeling that something doesn't fit, that you are living up to expectations you never agreed to carry, that you are following a script someone else wrote but you never read. Zarathustra looks at this and feels no pity. He feels urgency because there is a price to pay for living asleep, a cost you pay every day without realizing it. It is the cost of never knowing if your desires are really yours or just echoes of what you were taught to desire. It is the cost of pursuing goals that do not fulfill you, but that you cannot abandon because that's what you do. It is the cost of building an entire life on values you never chose and deep down never believed in. And perhaps the most devastating cost of all, it is reaching the end of your life and realizing that you never really lived, that you were just a well-behaved spectator of your own existence. Nietzsche called this the tragedy of the last man, the human being who wants nothing more than comfort, who avoids any discomfort at all costs, who traded greatness for security, depth for superficiality, authenticity for approval. And the most terrible thing, they don't realize they are empty. They think they are fine, but you realize it. Something inside you already knows that something is deeply wrong. You may not be able to name it yet. You may not fully understand it. But there is a restlessness that does not go away. A voice that whispers, "This is not everything. It can't be just this." And that uneasiness is dangerous, because once you start questioning, there's no turning back. Once you see the invisible mechanism that shaped you, you can no longer pretend you don't see it. Once you realize that you have been domesticated, that you have accepted values you never examined, that you have built a life on fragile foundations, innocence is over. And in its place, there remains only one question impossible to ignore. What do I do now? Zarathustra doesn't have an easy answer. In fact, he has no answer at all. He just points to the abyss and asks, "Do you have the courage to look?" Because on the other side of that abyss, there is no security. There are no guarantees. There is no new value system ready to tell you what to do. There is only you, and the unbearable freedom of having to create meaning out of nothing. The question is, can you handle that? So the first thing you need to understand is that when Nietzsche declared God is dead, he wasn't celebrating. He was diagnosing, and the diagnosis was grim. Humanity had killed the only thing that gave absolute meaning to existence, and now it didn't know what to do with the corpse. But let me be clear about what this really means, because most people hear God is dead and think Nietzsche was talking about religion. He wasn't, or rather, it wasn't just about that. God in this context is a metaphor for something much bigger. The idea that there is a transcendent, absolute, unquestionable authority that defines what is good and evil, right and wrong, valuable and insignificant. It is the belief that there is a cosmic script, a divine plan, a pre-established meaning for everything. For centuries, this belief was the foundation of Western civilization. It didn't matter whether you actually believed in God or not. You lived within a value system that was based on this idea. Your moral choices, your laws, your understanding of justice, all of this derived from the premise that there was a higher truth dictating the rules of the game. And then gradually, that foundation began to crack. Science dismantled the myths of creation. Reason eroded religious dogma. Modernity, with its faith in technical progress and human autonomy, made God increasingly unnecessary. It wasn't a dramatic event. It was a slow, almost imperceptible erosion. But the result was catastrophic. Because when you remove the cornerstone of a building, the entire building collapses. And that is exactly what happened. All the values that seemed natural, obvious, eternal, suddenly it became clear that they were just conventions, human constructs, inventions. And if everything is an invention, if there is nothing sacred or absolute, then what prevents us from saying that anything goes, that nothing matters, that it doesn't matter? Nietzsche saw this coming. He realized that the death of God would not open the doors to an era of rational enlightenment. On the contrary, it would open the doors to an unprecedented existential void. And he was right. Now look around you. Look at modern society. Do you see people living with genuine purpose? Or do you see people filling the void with whatever is available? Work, consumption, entertainment, validation on social media, obsessive productivity, endless distractions. None of this is malicious. None of this is necessarily bad. But notice the pattern. All of it serves to avoid confrontation with the void, because the void is unbearable. When you stop, really stop, and ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you can't find an answer other than because everyone else is doing it or because it's what's expected of me, you're staring straight into the abyss that Nietzsche described. And the instinctive reaction is to look away, quickly. Fill the silence with noise. Occupy the mind with tasks, anything to avoid facing the question. If there is no given meaning, if there is no transcendent purpose, then what am I doing here? But here's the most devastating point. Most people don't even realize they're running away. They think they are living life to the fullest. They think their choices are free. They think they are in control. But watch closely. Watch how it works. You wake up. You check your phone. You see how many likes yesterday's post got. You feel a small dose of dopamine if the number is good. You feel a pang of anxiety if it's low. You didn't choose this. You were trained for it. You go to work. You do your tasks. You seek approval from your boss. You try not to disappoint. You measure your worth by your salary, by promotions, by recognition. You didn't decide that this was how your life should be measured, but it's how you were taught to measure yourself. You have goals. Buy a better car. Move to a new apartment. Travel to destinations that seem important. Not because you really want these things, but because they are markers of success. They are proof that you are doing well. But doing well according to whom? Here is the brutal truth. When God died, when transcendent authority collapsed, humanity did not liberate itself. It panicked. And in panic, it did the only thing it knew how to do. It sought new gods, new authorities, new ready-made value systems, new scripts to follow, political ideologies that promise meaning through collective struggle, social movements that offer identity through belonging, self-help gurus who sell purpose in 5 easy steps, algorithms that decide what you should see, think, desire. Do you see the pattern? The form has changed, but the dynamic remains the same. Humanity continues to seek someone, anyone, to tell it what to do, to define what is right, to relieve the unbearable burden of having to decide for themselves what makes life worth living. And Nietzsche looks at this with a mixture of contempt and compassion, because he understands. He knows that real freedom is terrifying, that most people, if you offered them absolute autonomy, would refuse it. As he himself wrote, man prefers to want nothing rather than not want. Translation: people prefer to have an empty goal, a meaningless goal, a fabricated purpose, than to face the anguish of having no script to follow. What about you? Are you facing this anguish, or are you filling the void with substitutes? Think about it. Really think about it. When was the last time you made a genuine choice? Not a choice from a menu of acceptable options, but a choice that came from within. That didn't need anyone's approval. That didn't fit into any predefined category of success or achievement. When was the last time you wanted something just because you wanted it, not because you were taught to want it? If you're hesitating to answer, you already know the truth. The emptiness Nietzsche described is not a phase. It's not something you solve by reading a book or watching a motivational video. It's the fundamental condition of modern existence. You live in a world without absolute certainties, without eternal truths, without a cosmic purpose waiting to be discovered. And there are 2 ways to deal with that. The first is to pretend that the void does not exist. Fill every second with distractions. Adopt ready-made value systems. Follow what everyone else follows. Do what everyone else does. And never ever stop to ask why. This is the choice of the majority. And Nietzsche has a name for those who make this choice: the last man. The second way is more difficult, much more difficult. It is to look directly into the void, to accept that there is no script, to accept that no one will save you, to accept that the responsibility for creating meaning rests entirely with you. And then, in the midst of this abyss, to do something extraordinary, to create your own values, build your own ethics, decide for yourself what makes life worthwhile. Nietzsche called those who can do this beyond man, not because they are genetically or morally superior, but because they had the courage to face real freedom. And real freedom does not come with guarantees. It does not come with security. It does not come with approval. It comes only with the possibility of being true. But before you romanticize this, before you think you know what to do, let me warn you about something Nietzsche knew very well. Most people can't handle it. Most people don't want freedom. They want comfort. And there is a gulf between the two. So now you know. You know that God is dead. You know that there is no longer an absolute authority dictating the way. You know that theoretically you are free. Now what? What do you do with this information? The honest answer for most people is nothing. Because there is a huge difference between knowing intellectually that you are free and actually living as if you were. Between understanding that there is no script and having the courage to write your own. And here is the cruelest paradox of human existence. When we finally achieve the freedom we said we wanted so much, we discover that it is unbearable. Let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine that tomorrow morning you wake up and there are no more rules. None. No social expectations, no moral judgment, no divine consequences, no ready-made value system telling you what you should do. You can literally do anything. First reaction: ecstasy, total freedom. I can finally live the way I want. Second reaction, which comes about 30 seconds later: panic. Because without rules, without a script, without a defined direction, you realize you don't know what to do. You've spent your whole life waiting for someone to tell you the next step, and now there's no one. Just you and a huge void of possibilities. And infinite possibilities are not liberating. They are paralyzing. Kierkegaard understood this when he wrote about the anguish of choice. He realized that the freer you are, the heavier the responsibility. Because every choice you make, you can't blame anyone but yourself. You can't say, that's how I was taught. You can't say, it was what was expected of me. You can't say, I had no choice. You did, and you chose. And now you have to carry the weight of that choice forever. That's real freedom, and it's terrifying. That's why humanity spends its entire life running away from it. You see it everywhere, once you learn to recognize the pattern. You see it in the person who pursues a career they hate because it's stable. They're not making a choice. They're avoiding making one. You see it in the relationship that died years ago but continues because we've invested so much time. It's not love. It's fear of having to decide for yourself what to do with your life. You see it in blind adherence to political ideologies, where every complex question has a ready answer. It's not conviction. It's relief from not having to think for yourself. You see it on social media, where you post not what you think, but what will generate approval. It's not authenticity. It's outsourcing your own identity. And you see it above all in the relentless search for gurus, leaders, systems, methods, anything that promises to tell you what you should do to live well. Dostoevsky captured this perfectly in The Brothers Karamazov in the famous parable of the Grand Inquisitor. The story is simple but devastating. Jesus returns to Earth during the Spanish Inquisition, and instead of being celebrated, he is arrested. The Inquisitor confronts him and basically says, you offered humans freedom, but they don't want freedom, they want bread, they want security, they want someone to make the hard decisions for them. You have burdened them with choice, we have relieved them of that burden. And the most disturbing thing is that the Inquisitor is right. Most people, if you give them the choice between radical freedom and comfortable security, will choose the latter. Always. Because freedom requires courage. It requires you to face uncertainty without guarantees. It requires you to make mistakes and take responsibility for them. It requires you to live without excuses. And that is a crushing burden. That is why Zarathustra, when he comes down from the mountain, does not find eager disciples. He finds a crowd that listens to him with indifference, or worse, with hostility. Because he's not offering comfort, he's offering responsibility. He does not say, follow these 10 rules and you will be saved. He says, create your own rules and bear the consequences. He does not promise paradise after death. He points to life here now and says, this is all you have. What will you do with it? And the crowd recoils. Because the truth that no one wants to admit is this. Most people don't want to be free. They want to be guided. They want a master, a system, a doctrine, an authority to tell them what to think, what to value, how to live, not because they are naturally submissive, but because the alternative, building meaning from scratch without a map, without a safety net, is too scary. And you may be thinking, but I'm not like that. I think for myself. I make my own decisions. Really? Let's test it. How many of your opinions have you really built from your own reflection? And how many have you just inherited from your social group, your information bubble, the voices you hear most? How many of your life choices were genuinely yours? And how many were made from a menu of socially acceptable options? When was the last time you defended something that cost you socially, that isolated you, that put you at risk? If you've never paid a price for your autonomy, you're probably not as autonomous as you think. And that's not a judgment. It's just an observation. Most of us are, for the most part, operating in safe mode, making choices that minimize conflict, that maintain social approval, that keep us within our comfort zone. And calling that freedom is a lie. It's risk management. It's intelligent conformity. It's the art of appearing independent while following the script that everyone else follows. Nietzsche looks at this and feels no pity. He feels impatience, because he knows that the first step toward true freedom is not to achieve it. It is to admit that you are running away from it, to admit that you prefer known imprisonment to the unknown abyss, that you prefer to obey a system you hate rather than face the anguish of having no system at all. Admitting that when you say, I have no choice, what you really mean is, I'm afraid to choose. And once you admit that, once you stop lying to yourself about how free you are, something interesting happens. You realize that the prison has no lock, that the door has always been open, that you could have left at any time. But leaving means facing the desert. It means walking without knowing where you're going. It means building your own values in a world that will punish you for it. And then comes the question that Zarathustra asks from the beginning, the question that cuts deep. Do you really want to be free? Or do you just want the comfortable illusion of freedom while continuing to follow the script because you can't have both? Real freedom comes at a price. And the price is giving up all security, all certainty, all guarantees. The price is facing the void and saying, I'm going to create something here, even without knowing if it will work. And few, very few, are willing to pay that price Most prefer to continue sleeping. They prefer the last man. And about the last man, well, that's what we're going to explore now. So let me introduce you to someone. Someone you probably know very well. Maybe you even see him in the mirror from time to time. Nietzsche called him the last man. And it's not a casual insult. It's an accurate diagnosis of the final degeneration of the human spirit. The terminal stage of a civilization that has exchanged everything that is profound for everything that is comfortable. The last man is not a villain. He is not cruel. He is not wicked. In fact, he is extremely civilized, kind, peaceful, well-mannered. He follows the rules. He pays his taxes. He doesn't cause trouble. And that is exactly what makes him so repulsive to Nietzsche. Because the last man is not empty by accident. He chose emptiness. He looked at the possibility of greatness, of depth, of genuine meaning, and said no thanks. I prefer comfort. I'll describe a day in his life. See if you recognize yourself. He wakes up, not too early because we value balance. He checks his phone before getting out of bed just to make sure nothing important happened while he was sleeping. Nothing happened. Nothing ever does. But he keeps checking. He has breakfast. Something healthy, but not too healthy. Everything in moderation. He goes to work at a job that doesn't excite him but doesn't hurt him either. It's adequate, stable, safe. During the day, he does what needs to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. The key word of his life is sufficient. Sufficient effort, sufficient results, sufficient existence. At night, he goes home. He watches something. It doesn't matter what, just something to fill the time between dinner and sleep. Something that doesn't require much. Something comfortable. Something he's seen before. Or that's exactly the same as what he's seen before. Before going to sleep, he scrolls through his feed. He sees people living lives that seem more interesting than his. He feels a twinge. Not pain, not envy, just a vague feeling that he's missing out on something. But the feeling passes quickly. Tomorrow will be another day just like today. And he's fine with that. In fact, he's more than fine. He's satisfied. Because satisfaction for the last man is the absence of discomfort. And he has managed to build a whole life where nothing really bothers him. Now, do you see what Nietzsche saw? Do you see why it horrified him? It's not that the last man is suffering. It's that he's not feeling anything. He doesn't seek greatness because greatness requires risk. He doesn't seek depth because depth hurts. He doesn't seek truth because truth is inconvenient. He wants only one thing, not to be disturbed. He wants a smooth life, no rough edges, no conflicts, no difficult questions, no choices that take him out of his comfort zone. And modern society is perfectly equipped to give him exactly that. Look around. Look at what modernity offers. Endless entertainment, distractions on demand, instant gratification, comfort in every possible form, and above all, the promise that you never have to confront anything uncomfortable. Algorithms that show you only what you already agree with. Social bubbles where everyone thinks alike. Products that eliminate any friction from everyday life. Ideologies that reduce complex issues to simple slogans. All designed for one thing. To keep you comfortable. And it works. It works incredibly well. The last man no longer has to face existential emptiness because there is never enough silence for the emptiness to appear. He no longer has to question his values because there are millions of voices telling him exactly what to think. He no longer has to create meaning because there is an entire market selling prefabricated meaning. He has outsourced his existence, and he doesn't even realize it. But here's the crucial point. The last man is not an aberration. He is not a deviation. He is the natural destiny of a civilization that has elevated comfort to the supreme value. Nietzsche saw this more than a century ago. He looked at the direction modernity was taking and predicted. If we continue like this, we will produce a humanity that wants nothing more than to be comfortable. And he was right. Because today, if you ask someone what they want out of life, what is the most common answer? To be happy. And what does that mean in practice? It means having enough money not to worry. It means a relationship that doesn't require too much effort. It means a job that isn't too stressful. It means leisure. It means comfort. It means the absence of pain. There is nothing about creating something meaningful. There is nothing about pushing boundaries. There is nothing about contributing to something greater than oneself. Just, I want to be comfortable until I die. And that, for Nietzsche, is the death of the human spirit. Because do you see what has happened? What has really happened? Humanity has achieved so much. Technology, knowledge, resources, that it can now live without ever being truly challenged, without ever having to grow, without ever having to choose between comfort and truth. And when given that choice, most choose comfort. Always. Schopenhauer had already described this in another way. He spoke of the will to nothing, the deep, often unconscious desire to simply dissolve, to not have to want anything anymore, to not have to fight for anything, to just stop. And the last man is the perfect realization of this. He's not fighting against anything because he has given up fighting. He's not seeking anything because he has given up seeking. He just exists, and he finds that enough. Now comes the part that hurts. Because when Nietzsche describes the last man in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he has Zarathustra present this figure to the crowd as a warning, as something to be avoided, as the horrible future that awaits humanity if it continues on this path. And do you know how the crowd reacts? They applaud. They say, yes, give us the last man, that sounds great. They don't see the horror, they see the ideal. A life without suffering, without conflict, without great challenges, where everything is moderate, safe, predictable, perfect. That's exactly what we want. And Zarathustra realizes at that moment that he is speaking to an audience that is already dead inside, that has already chosen mediocrity, that has already given up on any possibility of greatness. So the question remains, what about you? Are you living or just managing comfort? Because the difference is brutal. And most people can't see the difference because they are so immersed in management mode that they have forgotten that there is another way. To truly live means to take risks. It means choosing things that may not work out. It means pursuing something that matters to you even when no one else understands why. It means being willing to suffer for something worthwhile. Managing comfort means minimizing risks. It means making safe choices. It means pursuing only what is socially validated. It means avoiding any suffering at all costs. And you can call that wisdom. You can call it maturity. You can call it learning from experience. But Nietzsche calls it what it really is, existential cowardice. And look, I get it. I really do. Life is hard. The world doesn't make it easy. There are bills to pay, responsibilities to fulfill, expectations to meet, and the promise of comfort is seductive. It's tangible. It's achievable. Greatness, deep meaning, radical authenticity, it all seems very abstract, very risky, very inconvenient. So you do the math in your head and decide, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to do what everyone else does. I'm going to build a decent life. And little by little, you give up on any possibility of something more. And one day you wake up at 40, at 50, at 60, and realize you've built a perfect prison. Comfortable, safe, adequate, but a prison nonetheless. And then it's too late? Not necessarily, but it's much more difficult. Because now you have to dismantle everything you've built. You have to admit that you've spent decades living on autopilot. You have to face the fact that you traded possibility for predictability. That's why Nietzsche has no patience with the last man. It's not hatred, it's frustration, because he sees wasted potential. He sees human beings who could be extraordinary choosing to be mediocre. He sees people who could create new values, live authentically, transform the world, choosing only to exist. And the tragedy is not that they are forced into this. It is that they choose it, actively, consciously. They look at the possibility of greatness and say, no, thank you. It seems like too much work. I'd rather stay here where it's safe. And Nietzsche cannot forgive that. Because he knows that once you choose mediocrity, once you accept comfort as the supreme value, it is almost impossible to go back. The last man does not evolve. He just remains comfortable, empty, satisfied with his own insignificance. And the question you need to answer honestly without comfortable lies is this: is that what you want to be? But Nietzsche doesn't just leave us with this devastating diagnosis. He doesn't point to the last man just to make us feel bad. He shows us the abyss, and then he shows us that there is a way. A terrible path, yes, painful with no guarantees that most will not be able to walk to the end, but a path nonetheless. And this path is described in one of the most powerful passages in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the 3 metamorphoses of the spirit. Camel, lion, child, 3 stages, 3 transformations, 3 ways of existing in the world. And most of humanity never leaves the first. The first metamorphosis is the camel. The camel is the beast of burden, the one who carries weights, who kneels to receive the burden, who says yes to everything that is imposed on him. And do you realize that this is not necessarily bad in the beginning? The camel is necessary, because at the beginning of life, you need to carry, you need to learn the rules, you need to absorb the culture, the values, the traditions. You need to build structure. The problem is not being a camel. The problem is never ceasing to be one. And most never do. Most spend their entire lives carrying weights they don't even know where they came from. Parental expectations, societal beliefs, values that no one has ever questioned but that everyone follows because that's the way things are. The camel doesn't question. It carries and carries and carries. It goes to college because that's what you do. It gets married because it's the right time. It buys a house because it's the next step. It works at something that doesn't excite it because it needs to be responsible, and it calls all of this duty. But duty to whom? According to what criteria? The camel never asks. It just obeys, and suffers in silence because it feels it should be able to carry more, always more. But then something happens. Sometimes it's a crisis. Sometimes it's just a moment of clarity. Sometimes it's simply the accumulation of years of frustration that finally reaches its limit, and the camel turns into a lion. The lion is rebellion. It is no. It is refusal. It is the one who looks at all the values he carried and says, no, I no longer accept this. The lion destroys. He denies. He breaks. He sees the chains that bound him and breaks them. He sees the rules that limited him and challenges them. It sees the authority that controlled it and rejects it. And that is liberating, deeply liberating. Finally, you feel that you are living, that you are making choices, that you are telling the truth. But here's the problem. The lion knows how to destroy, but it doesn't know how to create. It can say no to old values, but it can't say yes to new values. It can break with tradition, but it can't build anything in its place. And that's why so many lions get stuck at this stage, living in permanent revolt. Always defining themselves against something, never in favor of something, destroying without ever building. You see this everywhere today. You see it in the person who spent their whole life obeying and suddenly breaks with everything, quits their job, ends the relationship, cuts ties with the family, and thinks that's freedom. And it is. But it's only the beginning of freedom. It's not complete freedom. Because negative freedom, the freedom to say no, to break away, to destroy, is only half the equation. The other half, much more difficult, is positive freedom. The freedom to create, to build, to say yes to something new. And for that, the lion needs to transform one last time. It needs to become a child. The child is the final stage, and also the rarest. The child does not carry burdens like the camel. It does not destroy like the lion. The child creates, plays, invents, experiments. The child does not define itself against the past. It is not trapped in rebellion. It simply is. And from that being, it creates new values, new meanings, new possibilities. The child has something that the camel and the lion do not have: innocence. Not the innocence of ignorance, but the innocence of creation, the ability to start over, to not be trapped by resentment, to not need to justify every choice with reference to what came before. The child asks, what if? What if I tried that? What if I created that? What if I lived differently? Not because it is breaking with something, but because it is exploring possibilities. And here is the crucial point that most people do not understand. You cannot skip steps. You can't go directly from camel to child. You have to be a lion first. You have to destroy. You have to break away. You have to go through the rebellion. But you also can't get stuck in the lion stage. Because a lion that never becomes a child is just a perpetual destroyer. Someone who knows what they don't want but never finds out what they do want. The complete journey requires all three metamorphoses: carry, break through, create. And each has its price. So let me ask you, where are you on this journey? Are you still the camel? Still carrying weights you never chose? Still obeying values you never questioned? Still living up to expectations that aren't yours? If so, you are not alone. Most of humanity dies at this stage, carrying on until the end, never questioning, never breaking away. Or have you already become the lion? Have you broken away from old certainties? Have you said no? Have you destroyed the chains? If so, good. But don't stop there, because a lion that never becomes a child is just a perpetual resentful person. Someone who defines their entire existence by negation, who is always against, never in favor. And being against may seem radical, it may seem courageous, but it's not enough. Because in the end, you're still letting old values define who you are, only now by opposition. True freedom only comes when you become the child, when you stop reacting and start creating, when you stop defining yourself against something and start defining yourself for something. But let me be honest with you about something. Reaching the child stage is rare, very rare, because it requires something that few have: the ability to go through destruction without getting lost in it, the ability to say no without becoming bitter, the ability to break away without clinging to resentment. It requires you to burn everything that has been built on you, and then from the ashes build something new, not as a reaction, but as genuine creation. And that hurts, because you need to destroy even the certainties you gained in the revolt. You need to let go of even your identity as a revolutionary. You need to accept that there is no one to blame, no one to fight against, no one to validate your choices. There is only you. And the question, what will you create? How many lions do you know who never became children, Who spend their entire lives breaking, destroying, rebelling, but never building anything in its place? How many camels do you know who never even reach the lion stage? Who carry burdens their whole lives and die without ever questioning whether they should be carrying them? And how many children, how many true creators do you know? People who are not reacting but creating, who are not stuck in the past or rebelling against the past, who simply are, and from that being, invent new ways of living. Few, very few. And maybe you're thinking, I want to be that child. I want to get there. Great. But before you romanticize it, let me warn you. The price is high. You'll have to carry it until you can't take it anymore. You'll have to break with everything you know. You'll have to face the loneliness of someone who no longer follows the herd. You'll have to go through chaos with no guarantee that you'll emerge on the other side. And even if you do get through it, even if you reach the stage of the child, society won't applaud you. It won't validate you, because you'll be living in a way that most people don't understand and don't want to understand. You'll be creating new values in a world that just wants you to follow the old values. And that's lonely, very lonely, but it's the only path worth taking. Because in the end, the question isn't, will I be successful or will I be happy? The question is, will I truly live or will I just exist? If you've made it this far, something inside you already knows the answer. Something inside you already knows that there's no turning back, that you can't continue being the camel, that the time has come to roar. So tell me in the comments, which metamorphosis do you recognize yourself in? Are you still carrying burdens that aren't yours? Are you already breaking free but don't know how to create? Or have you reached the point where you can truly invent your own existence? Because this journey is not theoretical, it is real, and it starts now. But now comes the part that no one tells you when they talk about freedom, about overcoming yourself, about becoming who you really are. There is a price, and the price is loneliness. Not the temporary loneliness of someone who is among social groups, but the existential loneliness of those who have realized something that most will never realize, and who because of that will never be able to completely return to the world they left behind. Because once you see, you can't look away. Once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. And most people around you are still asleep, and that creates a chasm. Zarathustra understood this from the beginning. That's why he spent 10 years alone on the mountain before coming down. Not because he hated people, but because he needed to create distance to see clearly. And when he comes down, when he tries to share what he has seen, he encounters indifference, or worse, hostility. Because people don't want to wake up, they want to be comforted. They want someone to tell them they are on the right path, that their choices were good, that they don't need to change anything. And Zarathustra does not offer that. He offers truth, and truth is not comfortable. So people reject him, not because he is wrong, but because he is right, and that forces them to confront something they would rather ignore. You will feel this too if you haven't already. You will feel it when you start asking questions that people around you don't want to answer. When you start questioning values that everyone accepts as obvious. When you start living in a way that doesn't fit into conventional categories of success. At first, they will try to bring you back, with concern, with advice, with, that's how the world works, with, you're being too idealistic, with, one day you'll understand. Then when they realize you're not coming back comes judgment, distancing, subtle exclusion, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your existence has become an uncomfortable mirror. Because when you choose to live authentically, you expose, just by existing, the fact that others are living on autopilot, and people hate being confronted with that. Socrates knew this. That's why Athens sentenced him to death. Not because he was wrong, but because he wouldn't stop asking questions. He wouldn't stop exposing contradictions. He wouldn't stop forcing people to think for themselves. And the city decided, it's easier to kill him than to face what he's saying. Dostoevsky described it perfectly. It begins with moral disorder and ends with fanaticism of order. Translation: when you challenge the established order, when you question collective certainties, the reaction is not gratitude. It's punishment. Society does not reward those who force it to wake up. It rewards those who keep it asleep. And you need to be prepared for that. Because the path to overcoming is not popular. It is not celebrated. It does not come with applause or social validation. It comes with isolation. It comes with the feeling of speaking a language that no one else understands, of seeing something that no one else sees, of being concerned with things that others consider irrelevant. Your friends will think you are overcomplicating things. Your family will think you are losing your way. Society will think you are being immature, irresponsible, naive. And in a sense, they are right. Because from their point of view, you are. You are giving up security. You are refusing to follow the established path. You are choosing uncertainty. And for those who value security and comfort above all else, that seems crazy. But here's the truth you need to accept. You can't live authentically and please everyone. You can't. They are mutually exclusive. Either you live according to what others expect and lose yourself in the process, or you live according to who you really are and accept that many will not understand. And the second option is lonely, not because you will literally be alone all the time, but because you will be living on a different frequency. And most people simply cannot tune into that frequency. They will look at you and not understand why you are not satisfied with what they consider sufficient, why you don't accept the ready-made answers, why you keep questioning, searching, creating. And you won't be able to explain it, not in a way that makes sense to them, because explaining would require them to have already seen what you have seen, and they haven't. And in most cases, they don't want to see it, so you learn to carry it alone. You learn that there are certain conversations you can't have, certain truths you can't share, certain aspects of yourself you need to keep to yourself because no one around you can handle the weight of it. And that's no one's fault. It's not that people are bad or limited. It's just that they're at a different stage. They're still the camel, or maybe they're already the lion but stuck in rebellion. And you can't force them to move forward. You can't wake them up by force. All you can do is keep walking and accept that on this path most of the time you'll be walking alone. But let me tell you something important. This loneliness is not weakness. It's clarity. It is the price of seeing what most people don't see, of living what most people don't live, of creating what most people don't create. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to look around and realize that the people you love are living in a reality that you can no longer fully inhabit. It hurts not to be able to share the things that are most important to you because no one will understand. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is to go back. It's pretending you didn't see what you saw. It's forcing yourself to fit into a box that you already know is too small. And you can try to do that. Many try. They try to return to the herd after they've seen what lies beyond. But it doesn't work. Because once you've woken up, you can't really go back to sleep. You can only pretend. And pretending is a form of slow death. So you choose loneliness. Not because you want to, but because it's the only honest way. And over time, you learn that this loneliness has its own rewards. You have the clarity of knowing that you are living according to the truth, not according to expectations. You have the freedom to be who you really are, not who others want you to be. You have the dignity of having paid the price for authenticity. And from time to time, rarely, but it happens, you meet others who have also paid that price, others who have also seen, others who have also chosen the difficult path. And in those rare encounters, there is a connection that exists nowhere else, because you don't have to pretend, you don't have to explain, you just recognize each other. And that doesn't eliminate loneliness, but it makes it bearable. But make no mistake, most of the journey you do alone. Nietzsche knew this, Zarathustra knew this, and now you know it too. And the question is, can you handle it? Can you handle living authentically even when it means being misunderstood? Can you handle following your own truth even when it means giving up the approval of others? Because if you can't handle it, that's okay. Seriously, go back to the herd, accept the comfort, live a proper life. But if you can handle it, if something inside you refuses to accept anything less than the truth, then welcome to the loneliness of the path. It's the price, and it's worth it. And now we come to the most dangerous point of the journey. The moment when many who have begun to awaken end up losing themselves completely. Because something happens when you destroy all your old certainties, when you break with inherited values, when you realize that there is no pre-established meaning waiting to be discovered. You come face to face with nihilism. And nihilism is an abyss, a void so deep that it can swallow you whole if you don't know how to cross it. Let me be clear about what I'm saying. Nihilism is not just pessimism. It's not just being sad or disillusioned. It's something much more radical, much more dangerous. It is the conviction that nothing matters, that there are no real values, that every search for meaning is an illusion, that life in the end is absurd, empty, purposeless. And if you've come this far, if you've really questioned everything, if you've really destroyed your old certainties, then at some point you're going to look into that abyss, and it will look back at you. And at that moment, you will understand why most people prefer to remain asleep, why they choose comfort, why they accept ready-made values without question. Because questioning everything, destroying everything, can take you to a place where there is no longer any ground beneath your feet. Nietzsche knew this danger intimately. He wasn't just theorizing about nihilism, he lived within it. He felt the crushing weight of looking at the universe and finding no meaning whatsoever. And he warns us, nihilism is inevitable. Once you kill God, once you destroy the idea of absolute values, you have to cross the desert of nihilism. There is no shortcut. There is no way around it. The question isn't whether you'll encounter nihilism. It's what you'll do when you encounter it. Because there are two kinds of nihilism, and understanding the difference between them can be the difference between getting completely lost or emerging transformed on the other side. The first type is passive nihilism, the nihilism of giving up. It's looking at the void and saying, if nothing matters, then why do anything? Why try? Why create? Why live? It's paralysis, existential depression, the feeling that all effort is futile because in the end everything will disappear anyway. This type of nihilism is destructive. It devours you. It turns you into a walking corpse, still breathing, still functioning, but dead inside. And you see it all around you. You see it in people who have given up, who go through life on autopilot, without hope, without passion, just waiting for time to pass. They looked into the abyss, and the abyss swallowed them. But there is another kind, active nihilism. It is looking at the same emptiness and saying, if nothing has a pre-established meaning, then I can create meaning. If there are no absolute values, then I can forge my own values. If life does not come with a built-in purpose, then I can invent my purpose. Do you see the difference? It's not denying the void. It's not pretending the abyss doesn't exist. It's accepting the void and then using it as raw material for creation. As Nietzsche wrote, one must have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star. The chaos is real. The abyss is real. But it doesn't have to destroy you. It can transform you if you are brave enough. But let me be honest, crossing nihilism is dangerous, very dangerous. Because in the middle of the abyss, when everything seems meaningless, when you have lost your old certainties but have not yet built anything in their place, in the middle of the road, it is very easy to give up. It's very easy to say, I tried, I questioned, I searched, and I found nothing. So maybe there really is nothing. And then you have two options. Either you surrender to passive nihilism and become one of the living dead, or you run back to your old illusions, accepting any ready-made value system, any ideology that promises meaning, any belief that frees you from having to face the void. Both options are ways of giving up. And Nietzsche won't lie to you. Most people give up. Most people can't cross the desert. They can't bear the weight of nihilism. They don't have the strength to create in the midst of chaos. And there's no shame in that. It just is what it is. But if you've made it this far, if you're still reading, then maybe you're one of the few who can cross. So let me tell you what you need to understand. Nihilism is not the final destination. It's a passage. It's the space between destroying old certainties and creating new ones. It's the necessary void that must exist for something new to emerge. Think of it this way. You can't build a new house on the land where the old one still stands. First, you have to demolish it. And after the demolition, there is a moment when there is nothing. Only rubble. Only emptiness. But that emptiness is not the end. It's the beginning. The problem is that most people look at the rubble and think, I destroyed everything. There's nothing left. And they stop there. They don't realize that the destruction was necessary, that the emptiness was inevitable, that now, right now, is when the real work begins. And here's the crucial point. The beyond man is not someone who has never encountered nihilism. It is someone who has gone through nihilism and emerged on the other side. It is someone who looked at the emptiness and did not look away, who accepted that there is no given meaning, who recognized that every search for absolute values is an illusion. And then, in the midst of this brutal recognition, did something extraordinary, created. They created new values. Not because they are true in some cosmic sense, but because they decided they were true for them. They created purpose, not because they discovered universal purpose, but because they chose a purpose and made it real through action. They created meaning, not because the universe gave them meaning, but because they became the creators of their own meaning. And do you realize what that means? It means that ultimate freedom, real freedom, does not come from finding the right answers. It comes from accepting that there are no right answers, and yet choosing to live in a committed, passionate, true way. That is active nihilism. That is creation in the void. And that is what separates the beyond man from the last man. The last man never looked into the abyss. He lived his whole life avoiding it, filling every second with distractions, accepting ready-made values so he would never have to create his own. The beyond man looked into the abyss. He felt the weight of the void, and then he chose to create anyway. Not because he was sure, but because he had the courage. But here's the hard part. This creation doesn't happen once. It is not a moment of revelation where everything is resolved. It is a daily practice, a constant choice, a commitment renewed every morning. Because nihilism does not disappear. The emptiness does not go away. The awareness that nothing has absolute meaning does not go away. You just learn to dance with it, to create despite it, to live fully knowing that one day everything will end and nothing will remain. And there is something deeply liberating about that. Because when you accept that nothing matters in an absolute way, you also realize that this means you can make anything matter. You no longer need to seek cosmic validation. You no longer need to wait for the universe to confirm your choices. You no longer need guarantees. You just choose, and you make your choices meaningful through your commitment to them. But I won't lie to you, this is the loneliest part of the journey, because when you're going through nihilism, no one can help you. No one can go through it for you. No one can give you the answer that will make everything make sense again. You are alone in the desert. And either you find water within yourself or you die of thirst. And many die, not physically necessarily, but spiritually. They give up. They choose the living death of passive nihilism, or they flee back to their old illusions. But some, few but some, get through it. And when they emerge on the other side, they are different. They are stronger, more free, more true. Because they looked at the worst, the total absence of meaning, and still chose to create meaning. And that choice, made in the midst of emptiness, is the bravest thing a human being can do. So where are you on this journey? Are you avoiding the abyss? Filling your life with distractions so you never have to look into the void? Have you looked and been swallowed up? Have you given up? Have you accepted that nothing matters and stopped trying? Or are you in the middle of the crossing, in the desert, not knowing if you'll make it to the other side but continuing anyway? Because if you're in the middle, if you're feeling the weight of nihilism but haven't given up yet, then you need to know you're in the right place. The despair you feel is not a failure. It's a sign that you're finally waking up, that you're finally seeing things as they really are. And yes, it hurts, a lot, but the pain is part of the process. It's the price of becoming real. And on the other side of that desert, there is something waiting, not an answer, not a solution, not a ready-made meaning, but something better, the possibility of creating, the freedom to be, the strength to truly live. And that's no small thing, it's everything. So we've come to the end, or perhaps to the true beginning, because everything that has been said so far was not theory. It was not abstract philosophy to be admired from afar. It was diagnosis. It was a scalpel. It was a mirror. And now you are seeing your own reflection clearly for the first time. And the question that remains, the only question that matters is, what are you going to do with what you have seen? I'll be blunt with you. Most people will do nothing. Most will watch until the end, feel a pang of recognition, maybe even a flash of desire to change, and then go back to life exactly as it was before. They will return to work that doesn't excite them. They will return to relationships on autopilot. They will return to familiar comfort. And in a few weeks, it will all seem distant, like a dream you had that you can't quite remember. And that's not a judgment. It's just what happens. Because the truth that Nietzsche understood, that Zarathustra understood, is that most people don't want to wake up. They want to be comforted. They want someone to tell them that everything is fine, that their choices were good, that they don't need to change anything. And this video doesn't offer that. It never has. But if you're still here, if something inside you refuses to accept going back to sleep, then you need to understand one thing. There's no going back. You can't unlive what you've lived. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't go back to believing in the old illusions with the same innocence. You've crossed a threshold, and now you are on the other side. And on the other side, life doesn't get easier. It gets more real, more intense, more alive. Because when you stop living on autopilot, when you stop following ready-made scripts, when you stop seeking external approval, you finally start to truly live. But truly living requires something that most people are not willing to give. Courage. Courage to be misunderstood. Courage to disappoint expectations. Courage to make mistakes without anyone to blame. Courage to create in the void. Courage to live without guarantees. Zarathustra does not ask for followers. He never has. He does not want you to idolize him. He does not want you to repeat his words as dogma. He does not want you to turn his philosophy into yet another system of ready-made beliefs. What he wants, what Nietzsche wanted, is for you to wake up, for you to stop blindly obeying, for you to stop accepting values you have never examined, for you to stop living the life others have written for you to become who you really are. And that is not something you achieve by reading a book, or watching a video, or following 10 simple steps. It's something you achieve through years of struggle, of questioning, of destruction and reconstruction, of mistakes and new beginnings. It's a journey, and the journey never really ends. But let me tell you what changes when you choose this journey. You stop measuring your life by other people's standards. You stop seeking external validation. You stop needing the world to confirm that you're right. You start creating your own standards, your own values, your own measure of success. And at first it seems scary, because there's no map, there are no guarantees, there's no one to tell you that you're doing well. But over time, you realize that this uncertainty, this lack of a script, is exactly what makes life worth living. Because when you're not following a script, every choice becomes meaningful. Every decision matters. Every day is an opportunity to create something new. You stop existing and start living. And there's something else that changes, something profound. You stop being afraid of death, not because you stop valuing life, but because you realize that a life truly lived, with authenticity, with courage, with commitment, is complete in itself. It doesn't have to last forever to be meaningful. It doesn't have to leave an eternal legacy to be worthwhile. Living fully for one day is worth more than existing half-heartedly for decades. And when you understand that, really understand it, fear loses its power over you. You no longer need to procrastinate. You no longer need to wait for the right moment. You no longer need guarantees. You can just start now, here. But I'll be honest with you about something. You will fail. Not sometimes. Often. Constantly. You will make wrong decisions. You will create values that you will later need to revise. You will build things that will fall apart. You will start paths that you will have to abandon. And that's okay. Because the point is not to get it right. The point is to live. It is to create. It is to try. The Beyond Man is not perfect. He is just committed. Committed to truth. Committed to growth. Committed to authenticity. And that commitment doesn't eliminate error. It just makes it part of the process. So what Zarathustra is asking, or what this video is asking, is not that you be perfect. It's not that you have all the answers. It's not that you never doubt. It's just that you be honest. Honest about what you're feeling. Honest about what you're experiencing. Honest about the fact that maybe, just maybe, you're not really living. You're just following a script. And if you can be honest about that, if you can admit that you're asleep, then there's hope. Because awakening begins with the admission that you were asleep. Now what? Now you have a choice. You can close this video and go back to life as it was. You can pretend none of this touched you. You can choose comfort, security, sleep. No one will judge you. Seriously, most people make that choice. And there is a certain peace in that. The peace of those who have stopped fighting. But if there is something inside you, a flame, a restlessness, a voice that refuses to be silenced, then you have another option. You can start to wake up. You can start to question. You can start to destroy the old certainties. You can start to cross the desert. And it won't be easy. It will be lonely. It will be scary. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. But it will also be the truest thing. And in the end, not at the end of your life, but at the end of each day lived fully, you will look back and know, I lived. I didn't survive. I didn't just exist, I lived. And that's all Zarathustra is asking. Not that you have to be extraordinary, just that you have to be true. So tell me, are you ready to face the idea of the Beyond Man? Or will you remain in the comfort of the herd? Because this is not a rhetorical question. It is a real choice, one that you must make. Now, and no one can make it for you. Zarathustra will not save you. Nietzsche will not save you. This video will not save you. You need to save yourself. And salvation here does not mean being rescued. It means waking up. It means looking at your life with brutal honesty and asking, is this all there is? Is this it? Or is there something more? And if there is something more, and you know there is, then what are you doing to achieve it? Nothing has changed out there. The world remains the same. People are still asleep. Society continues to push you toward mediocrity. But something has changed in here. You've seen it, and you can no longer pretend you haven't. And that is the curse and the blessing of awakening. A curse because now you can no longer rest in the old illusions. A blessing because now you can finally start living for real. And the choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be. So what will it be? Watch the next videos on the channel, count on me, and follow the White Rabbit.